YouTube, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today, guys, it's a good day, and yes, I'm sorry for the last week since I've only uploaded 2 or 3 videos. But anyways, I was really busy last week, and that was really a problem for making videos. Anyhow, I am gonna make it up to you guys. To start off, we are gonna talk about the tier list. The new season has came out, and we are gonna talk about some of the decks that's gonna be good for Diamond 1, good for Diamond 5. Does this deck need a good pilot to even go towards Diamond? Or you just want to have fun? So without further ado, let's start this scrappy thing out. First, we have 8 Axis. Now 8 Axis is a really good Diamond 1 deck. Whether or not you have a good pilot, it is a really straightforward deck to even actually pilot on. And furthermore, this is always a go second deck, or most of the time this is actually a go second deck, so it's much easier for you to go second for this deck since you'll have a ton of board breakers, a ton of kaijus, or a ton of back row and front row removals that you can actually use for this deck. That is why this card is gonna be an easy Diamond deck 1 deck. Adam Emancipators, I'm gonna go with Diamond 5, I would say. Diamond 1, it's really hard to make this into a Diamond 1 deck. Whether or not you're going to use a 40 or 60 card deck, it doesn't really matter. This deck is still really good though. Even though Black Dragon is on 1 copy, I do believe that Emancipators are really flexible in its own game. The only downside of this is you'll all be using only monsters for your combos, and not much of a spell or traps that supports this deck, by the way. That is why in some 40 card decks you'll actually use around 38 monsters and then 2 or 4 trap cards or spells in your deck. There are some situations I've tried that one anyway. I think there's another variant for this with the new Vernisil archetype that's added into Emancipators, and by far they're really good. The only downside for having a 60 card deck with the Vernisil or the Vernalizer Fairies is that once you sync off into a non-earth monster, they can't even use the effect, so there's one risk there to actually using that archetype. But even so, it is an easy Diamond 5 deck to actually grind yourself into. And then we have Ultra Guys. Even though you have a good pilot with this, you can go for a Diamond 5, and I do believe that this is one of the best control decks there is, especially with the coming or in the future we'll have a good support for the Ultra Guys. But will it be meta changing or something? No, I don't think so. But in a sense, control decks are really an easy Diamond 5 deck to actually use on. And then we have Blue Eyes White Dragon. So I would say just to have fun with the deck. I do believe I've seen some players actually go into Diamond 5 with this deck. There are a ton of supports for a Blue Eyes White Dragon deck. That includes also for Dark Magician. So I'm just gonna put Dark Magician here. They're actually quite similar. The only difference with a Blue Eyes White Dragon or a Dark Magician deck is basically you can grind yourself up to Platinum or Diamond 5 if you wish, with another variant of course. But I do believe that having to pull off a ton of combos and then settle yourself with 2 or 3 monsters in the field, which doesn't really have that much of a protection unless you have a ton of good back rows. But yeah, that's my own insight for a Blue Eyes or Dark Magician deck. So I'm sorry if ever some of the Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dark Magician players gets offended for this video. Yeah, that is my own opinion, my insight on the tier list. Yeah, you can go in the comment section below and just rant yourself out. Next up, we have Branded Despia. Now, Branded Despia, even way back, are an easy Diamond 5 deck. Now, there are a couple of variants for this that you can actually use for a Diamond 1 deck, and that is for the tier elements. So, tier elements, branded tier elements are one of the best ways to actually use or utilize the Branded Despia deck. But I would say, just in general, for a Branded Despia deck, you can go for a Diamond 5 deck. Maybe, yeah, around that level only. But if you're using a branded tier elements deck, you can go for Diamond 1. I mean, meta is always meta, guys. The thing about this is, even though Aliber is down to 2 copies, or branded opening is down to 2 copies, it doesn't really change the fact that Branded Fusion is still there with 3 copies, and that is one of the reasons why OCG actually limited Branded Fusion, because of its consistency of even using more of the Fusion Monsters, regardless if it's a branded or not. So that is why it is easy enough for a Diamond 5 deck for brandeds to be in this type of tier list. And then, next up we have Dinos. Now Dinos, I would say, Diamond 5. Now, if you really have a good pilot for this, you can go for a Diamond 1 play. Now, I can just put this one on a Diamond 1 deck, but it really differs on a good pilot. So I'm just going to put this one on a good pilot. Much easier to actually explain this in a sense, because I've seen some players just run this one on Diamond 5, but I've seen other players also that uses this type of deck to go towards Diamond 1, and I do believe that works well with most of the meta nowadays. And then we have Eldritch the Golden Boy, or the Eldritch deck. Now Eldritch at the moment hasn't been really seeking play. It's really hard to say, but I'm gonna put this one on just have fun. Now this might be controversial in a sense, because Eldritch way back is one of the best meta decks before in Master Duel. At the moment, having to discard a ton of cards with the current tier element decks just roaming around, it is really hard to get out resources, especially if your Eldritch the Golden Lord is sent to the graveyard and then might easily be banished or returned back to the deck with the help of the Shizo cards, or even milled out because of the Shizo cards as well. Also, or furthermore, there are some decks that actually banishes cards from the graveyard, like the Exo Sisters or even the Sword Souls. So that's one of the problems there. And if ever you're going up against a branded deck, your Eldritch will be banished as well. So it's really bad for this type of deck. Even though you have a good pilot, even though you're going for a control deck or a stun deck for this matter on a Eldritch deck, really hard to pull it off. Trap cards is the bread and butter for an Eldritch deck, which of course, as you might know, the floodgates nowadays are limited to 1, so it's gonna be bad for you to even use this deck on the current meta. And then we have Exo Sisters. So Exo Sisters is an easy Diamond 1 deck, I would say. And I've actually proven that, because when I touched Diamond 5, I tried Exo Sisters afterwards, and it got me a lot of win. It grinded me out like a few games to Diamond 4, and then like a few games after Diamond 3. So it wasn't really hard to actually use this deck. It is very straightforward. Even though this is actually a control deck in a sense, having to banish out some of the significant cards for a tier elements deck is what you need to actually counter the current meta. So that is why this is still a good Diamond 1 deck. And then we have Floowandereeze. Now Floowandereeze has a lot of problems way back in a couple of ban lists. So there was the barrier statue that was removed, I would say, and there was recently the downgrade of the number of copies for the map. So that was really a problematic scene for Floowandereeze deck. But even so, they are actually tier 2, by the way, in the current meta. And I do believe that they're really good in the current meta. Having like Dimensional Fissure, Macrocosmos, or even Dimension Shifter on their arsenal is one of the go-to things that they actually use to counter against the current meta. And then we have Gravekeepers. Now, Gravekeeper control decks are easy enough for a Diamond 5, I would say. Whether or not you have a good pilot, this is actually a straightforward deck. But the only benefit on this deck is you being able to use Necro Valley. Now, Necro Valley, by far, having to stop your opponent from ever removing cards from the graveyard is really significant. And then we have Heroes. Now, Heroes at the moment are really insane to actually use. They can be a good Diamond 5 deck, but it really takes a good pilot to even go towards a Diamond 1. And most of the people actually believe this, because they are a really significant deck to even go on the current meta. Especially if you have Dark Law on the field, easy counter to most of the problematic cards or problematic decks nowadays. Even so, Plasma is one thing that you don't want to laugh at. Second, if ever you want to skip one turn, you can't, because you'll get OTK'd because of Heroes. And I do believe they are a really strong deck once you have a good pilot using this deck, by the way. And then we have Labyrinth. Although there are some cards missing, for like 2 or 3 cards missing for the Labyrinth deck, but I do believe they are really good for a Diamond 5 deck. Some people are saying that this is actually a skill-based deck, but I'm not sure. With the current meta, you are just going to be revolving around your Ariana and then your lovely Labyrinth, and and then a ton of trap cards, by the way. So going for Diamond 5 is easy enough. And then we have Madolche. So Madolche at the moment, because of the Vernusup archetype, since most of them or all of them are Earth monsters and they revolve around Earth monsters alone, which of course Exy monsters as well are all Earth monsters, it is easy enough to actually use this with the Vernusup deck and without any problems to even use the effects of your extra deck monsters on the field. So by far, this is an easy Diamond 5 deck. Now the only downside for this deck is whether or not you're going first. Same like Adamanspators, if you're going first, you'll actually win you the game, basically. If not, if you're going second, you're still comboing it off, then there are some problems with that. Of course, like any other deck, by the way, going first is always crucial for a game. And then we have Marensis. Now at the moment, Marensis is, I would say, just have fun. It is hard to actually depend on the field spell, by the way, and the field spell is one of your bread and butter to actually win you some games. If you're going first in the Marensis and you are unchallenged or unnegated or undisrupted during that combo, then you can easily win you the game. Although Marensis is basically a combo linked deck, there's still problems with that if ever you're going second. So I'm just gonna put this on just have fun. Now I do believe that some players out there are really into the Marensis deck, and by far they can really grind themselves up to Diamond 5. Now I don't really doubt you guys for grinding yourself to Diamond 5, but on my own opinion, this is really just a fun deck. Now next we have Mathmex. So Mathmex, I would say, if you're going for pure Mathmech build, it is really actually hard to actually play this into the current meta, especially if you reach Diamond. Though it's really hard to actually play this on. I think you're just gonna put this on Diamond 5 because this deck is basically still really good in a sense. You need a ton of resources for this matter. And if ever you're going up against the current meta, you're not gonna win most of your games, basically. Easy Diamond 5, even though you're going for a good pilot for this, it's easy enough for a Diamond 5. Once you touch Diamond 5, you'll be moving with, or you'll be going up against a ton of decks that rely mostly on the Banished Zone rather than the Graveyard. And if ever you're going up against a deck that relies on the Graveyard, that will be Tier Elements, basically Tier Elements. And then we have Malphys. Now, pure Malphys, I would say you just want to have fun, but Sprite Malphys, really good Diamond 5, really good Diamond 1. It's basically like that. Now, before you even go into the comments now, why is Malphy on a just have fun deck? Understand, this is pure Malphy, alright? Pure Malphy. Then we have Orcus. I would say, even today, Orcus got a lot of supports, with Galatia on the current meta on 3 copies. Really insane, really insane. I've seen some of the Orcus players that actually win the game on 1 card alone, and basically that is what they only need to actually win the game. And with that kind of power, it is easy enough to say that this is one of the Diamond 1 decks that you can actually use. Now, I know that it's not part of the tier list for Master Duel meta, but understand guys, there are some of the decks nowadays that are not even in the tier list for the Master Duel meta, but are still really good for a Diamond 1 deck. It's just a matter of how you actually use the deck that can make you into a Diamond 1 deck. So next up we have Punks. Now Punks is an easy Diamond 5 deck, I would say. I don't believe they are really bad at the moment. And then we have Rikas. Now Rikas or Sun Avalons are basically Diamond 1, but it really takes a good pilot to actually use this. I'm gonna put this one on a good pilot, and I do believe that. So Sun Avalanche are mostly plant decks or combo decks in general. If you're going first for this and you are unmatched, unnegated, or undisrupted, it is easy enough to set up a good board, basically, and having to tribute to your opponent's monster because of the field spell, really insane, by the way. It really takes a ton of knowledge for a Rika player or a Sun Avalanche player to actually do a good combo for this. And I've seen some players actually make a mishap and then just easily surrender because they actually made a mishap. Oh, here we go. So Runex, guys. Runex. With the current meta, I would say just have fun. So with the current situation with Runex, they have their entire arsenal of runic cards down to 2 copies. Furthermore, Floodgates is down to 1 copy. So that's one thing that is really detrimental for the deck. And I do believe some of the runic players out there are really sour or really bitter, it is really hard for the deck to actually perform in the current situation. And then we have Shaddolls. Now, this is actually a pure version of Shaddol, so you might be wondering why Shaddol here. I do believe some of the players are actually using Shaddolls in most of my games. Some of them are using Shaddolls with another variant other than Tier Elements. But yeah, I'm gonna put this one on Just Have Fun, having to rely mostly in the graveyard, which is not gonna be a best thing for them because of the current situation where they can easily be banished with Exorcisters and Flow Under Reese. Furthermore, they can be banished with Branded Despias. But yeah, that is basically Shaddol. And then we have Sky Strikers. Now, at the moment, I'm gonna put this one on Just Have Fun for a deck. Now, yeah, I know. Why is Sky Strikers on a Just Have Fun deck? Now, understand this: Shizu cards are still rampant in the current meta, so it's easy enough to recycle your resources from the graveyard back to your deck. Most of the decks nowadays that has Dimension Shifter, Dimensional Fissure, Macro Cosmos, or even DD Crow, so it's gonna be bad for you to even use this deck in the current meta. So yeah, that's why I'm gonna put this one on a Just Have Fun for a deck. And yeah, you can rant in the comment section if you wish. Now, Sprites, easy Diamond 5. Understandably, easy Diamond 5. You can go for Diamond 1 with another variant, of course. Or even just the regular Sprite deck, and go for a Diamond 1 deck or Diamond 1 play. Alongside most of the Dimension Fissure, DD Crows, ton of negates on your deck to actually go up against a Tier Elements deck. Whether or not you have a good pilot for this, it's easy enough to... It is, I would say... straightforward to actually play this deck in Diamond, by the way. Oh yeah, here we go. So we have Stun Decks. Stun Decks easy enough for Diamond 1 play. And I do believe that this deck is still really good on Diamond 1. Even way back, Stun Decks was really good in most of the current meta or against the current meta. So I'm just gonna put this one on Diamond 1 basically. But yeah, it's really straightforward. You just summon a monster in the field, have a ton of back rows. That's basically it. You just rely mostly on that one monster and that back row. Now, Sword Soul, I would say, is still Diamond 1. And I do believe whether or not you're going first or second, you still have a ton of cards that you use for your arsenal just to break some boards. Now, I've seen a lot of variants for Sword Soul at the moment that includes having a copy of Dark Ruler No More or even evenly matched in their arsenal to even go up against a Tier Elements deck or even go up against the current meta. But yeah, if you're going first and you actually pull it off, you just basically summon Long Yon or Sinister Long Yon or Draco Berserker of the Tenyu in the field and then banish your opponent's monster once they use their effects. So really insane. Against Tier Elements, I don't want to explain this anymore. They're really Tier 0, so just Diamond 1. Therions, I would say just have fun. Basically, it's hard to actually use Therions at the moment, especially if your monster in the graveyard are being recycled back to your deck, so it's gonna be a dud for you. And of course, there's a problem for bricking with this type of deck. Thunder Dragons. Oh yes, I would say go for Diamond 5. Even with the current meta on Dragonhawk on 3 copies, I think this is gonna be a really good deck to actually use in the current meta. Athletes. Honestly, I don't know how to use this deck, but I've seen some players actually use this even with the couple of cards on the field. So it's kind of like Spirals in a sense, where their board is somewhat mediocre once you've seen it, and I do believe some of the players are actually basing it on that. But once you play it off, they're actually winning. So it's kind of like that. So you have to have a good pilot to actually use this type of deck, and that's basically on my own opinion, though. I haven't actually tried this deck, but I only just dealt with this type of deck most of the time. So yeah. Umi Control, I would easily go for, even though for a good pilot it's really bad at the moment. Even with the current meta, oh my god, they have downgraded Foolish Burial Goods to 1 copy only. So it's really sad for this type of deck. Whether or not you actually summon the Kaiser Dragon Lord on the field, you're gonna have a hard time actually defending it by most of the cards nowadays. Untarget Destroy and Target Banish is really a problem for it. Also, back row removals is really prominent in the current meta nowadays because of Pillarino and most of the Tier Elements trap cards. So, downgrade to just have fun for a deck. Rena Self, one of the good archetypes nowadays, but on its purest form, it's really hard to actually use this on because you have to discard 1 card and then another one to spell summon just 1 monster from the graveyard. And even so, with that situation there, Ishizu cards will actually kill you with just the Keldo or even the Modora. So yeah, basically. Oh yeah, here we go. DDD. Now I dealt with some of the DDD decks nowadays. It really takes for a good pilot, and I do believe this is one of the best decks there is for a pendulums. Closely similar to Endymion, but very complex in a sense for its own archetype. I've seen some players just winning the game with just one card after their board was destroyed. But yeah, like I said earlier, you need to have a good pilot for this type of deck, and that is based on my own knowledge and experience for a DDD deck. Now I know there are a ton of lines for a DDD deck to actually use into, but yeah, they are really insanely good for the current meta or even before the tier elements came out. So yeah, going with good pilot for this type of deck. And that is the tier list for you guys. So tell me your thoughts, tell me if you're mad or whatsoever in the comment section below. But leave a like, of course, and subscribe for more contents like this in the near future. Let's be signing off. Keep safe, good luck, and babooey.